Metroid Dread is an action-adventure game developed by Nintendo and Mercury Steam and published by Nintendo. With a how long to beat time of 9 hours on average, it took me 9 hours and 3 minutes to beat the game and see credits. Metroid Dread is the first 2D Metroid game with an original story since Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance in 2002. Even with that 20-year gap, Metroid Dread stays true to its roots with a large map full of collectibles and backtracking. If you need an idea of what this game is like, think about games like Hollow Knight, Blasphemous, and Ori and the Blind Forest. Need a better idea about the game? Well, you're in luck. I'm Vivix Tales, this is Backlog worthy. Let's talk about Metroid Dread. Combat is a big part of Metroid Dread, most likely because you need to fight and blast your way through this planet. Once I got used to the Switch Pro Controller again after playing on PC for so long, the combat felt great. Basic shooting with Samus's blaster was simple enough for someone like me. The missile cannon was another story for a bit. As someone whose last games were Scarlet Nexus and Dragon Quest VII, you could probably tell that aiming was missing from my skill set. After I messed around with the aiming system, which is just moving the left stick by the way, I got used to running and gutting very quickly. The parry system is my favorite mechanic in Metroid Dread. Like, if I had to explain how good this parry system made me feel, I would have some pretty good comparisons. Imagine the feeling of finally being able to use the bathroom after a long car ride. That feeling of euphoria coursing through my veins every time I was able to land is unrivaled. The best parry a person could ever think about landing is against an Emmy. Being able to swipe away a death robot trying to kill you releases an amount of dopamine that is unheard of. With the ability to parry being tied to a single X button, the only thing stopping you is your own skill and timing. Outside of that mini rant of mine, parrying is a skill you have to kind of master, or at least get the hang of, whether you want to or not. Some battles are tied to parrying the enemy and killing them that way, while other things such as cutscenes are also tied to the parrying system. Even when it comes to the Emmys, parrying is something that could help prolong your escape for a few minutes longer, but I can talk about that later. The gameplay of Metroid Dread is simple since it hasn't really changed since the original Metroid on the NES. As Samusaran, you go around the planet and defeat bosses while trying to reach your goal. In the original Metroid, it was getting to and defeating Mother Brain, while in Dread, the goal is to figure out who the mysterious creature is and why they took your abilities. Along the way, there are many power-ups to get your hands on, with old favorites like the Screw Attack and Plasma Beam, along with new additions of the Spider Magnet and Phantom Cloak. There's an ability that everybody can call their favorite. In the world of Metroid Dread, you play as Samusaran, who has been sent to planet ZDR to investigate the sightings of the X-Parasite. Shortly after arriving, you get your ass kicked by a Chozo and are stripped of all of your abilities. Due to this, you now have two goals: continue to investigate the sightings of the X-Parasite, as well as find this Chozo and regain your abilities. When it comes to the world of Metroid Dread, I can certainly say that it is indeed a Metroid game by design. Looking at the map, it pretty much is a big convoluted mess. Different sections of the map are connected by either elevators or doors. Elevators are the easiest way to get to the different locations at first, as you will stumble upon them and travel to the new locations. The doors are a different story, however. Hiding behind the doors can be locations that you can access, but probably won't want to at first. As the basic armor Samus owns can only protect against so much, extreme heat and cold are something that falls through the cracks of the suit. Since these doors can be hiding these weather conditions, walking through the door can start to deal damage to you if you're unprepared for what lies before you. Another distinct area within this world would be the Emmy Zones, which is honestly the only place on this planet that scared me every time I had to enter one. You can always tell that you're looking at an Emmy Zone by the door that leads into it. Rather than being a normal bubble door that you can find throughout Metroid Dread, the Emmy door is more of a PlayStation 2 loading screen type door. Walking through the door will take you to the Emmy Zone, which is practically just a huge white area with gray platforms. Now, it's not only the room that completely scares me, but what hides in it. There is one Emmy per area, and as soon as they sense you and find you, it is one hell of a game of tag. You either escape with your life, or die trying. There are a handful of characters that you will come across many times throughout your playthrough of Metroid Dread. The main one, weirdly enough, is the main character. Samusaran is the main character of the Metroid series. He's a badass bounty hunter, which is easily known if you've played the other games within the series, which is something I have not done admittedly. Throughout all of the cutscenes littered in the game, you can really tell that Samus has a no shits given attitude. Emmys are freaky creatures that are crawling all over the Emmy zones throughout the world. Every time I entered these areas, I had genuine anxiety flowing through my veins. There's just something about the fear of being chased that really does it for me. And this is where I bring up parrying again. Against Emmys, there's really only two forms of escape. parry and keep running, or defeating central units in enemy zones and using the Omega Cannon to finally destroy the robot once and for all. Adam is your robotic voice partner throughout the entirety of Metroid Dread. Think of Iron Man and Jarvis, except that you don't have that voice in your head at all. Every time you enter a new area on this planet, there's a console room that can be found where Adam will give you the most up-to-date information that he has. Without saying much to avoid too many spoilers, the final use of Adam is most definitely my favorite cutscene in this game. When it comes down to the characters, I do believe a lot of them play a good purpose in Metroid Dread. The only thing I do wish Nintendo and Mercury Steam did would be teasing the final boss throughout your time in this game. While I do think that the reveal of the final boss at the end has an impact, there's just an empty feeling in me where I felt like something more could have been done. Despite people hating Metroid Dread for being a 2D game in 2021, I feel like it was a good direction for them to go in. With battle scenes being in 3D, I think it was a good balance between the two mediums. Something I did notice was how the lighting and monsters work in the areas throughout Planet ZDR, but other than that, areas feel lackluster. Some areas felt unalive outside of the monsters that you're killing. With the game being good in other regards, I do feel like Metroid Dread really skipped over the environments, as if it was something you weren't gonna spend the entire game traversing. The music is also not really something to write home about. Sure, I can easily say there are some good songs in the OST of Metroid Dread, such as the theme of Super Metroid. The rest of the music throughout the game is not really anything special. The music for a new area, or just an area in general, should mean something, rather than just being present. The lack of anything special throughout the entirety of a 9-hour playthrough leaves a lot of room for improvement. Metroid Dread is a great game overall, despite some of the shortcomings the game has. I can say that I'm happy that this was my introduction to the Metroid series, as it leaves me wanting to experience more of what the series can offer. Metroid Dread gets a 7 out of 10, as things like the characters and combat left me wanting more of what I experienced, while the music and the world design left me wanting more of what I lacked during my playthrough.